Welcome to the Business Women Australia webinar roundtable discussion. We're meeting virtually today and we're delving into the important subject of building healthy communities. I'm super excited to have Dr. Sasha Fulton on the panel with me today from Peak Preparation and Angie Bain from Fremantle Football Club. I'll just, before I actually go in further into introducing our esteemed panel, I would like to acknowledge the country in which we are meeting. I'm sitting in Western Australia in Perth on the land of the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and I'd like to pay respects to Aboriginal elders, those that have been before us, those that are walking with us and sharing us their wisdom, their culture, their art, their stories, and those that are emerging and yet to be born. It's a tough time for our friends in the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities around Australia, and my heart is bleeding for them. I celebrate and share the hope that our Indigenous sisters in business can work with us to actually heal the nation and create some opportunities. Some of the good things that have come out of the conversations over the last few months, and work towards actually closing the gap. I'm Lynn Hawkins. I'm the National Director of Business Women Australia. Link with me on LinkedIn. I'd love to follow your journey. I'd love to see more of you if you're listening to this recording or if you're new to Business Women Australia. I'm always available to make time to listen to and help any woman who's in business or in an executive role trying to improve their voice or raise their visibility, because that's really what the Business Women Australia vision is all about. We support each other in helping achieve our goals and dreams in life, and to raise the female leadership and the female visibility of our knowledge and expertise in communities around Australia. We're very collaborative. Everything that we do is in collaboration as a co-creation model with our members. And our members are business owners and entrepreneurs, but also directors, executives, managers across the for-purpose and the profit space, professionals, consultants and coaches. We have quite a few C-suite women that we work with in those chief executive roles, and women on boards, leaders and emerging leaders, and also wonderful students who participate in our community. So we really focus on this concept of leadership, which is not a title as such. It's actually, I think, a mindset. Leadership comes from leading self first and then leading others to actually be a champion of change. Business improvement's another area that we focus on. Personal growth is a big one. As well as that comes professional growth, influence, profile, connecting, and of course with connecting comes wonderful friendships. When we sat down many years ago in 2015 to look at building what was going to be this national collective of women, we had no idea how important these shared values are. We mapped out what it meant to us to be inclusive and to embrace diversity, to have courage to step into things and not be perfect and actually have a go at things, to be honest with each other and come from this conscious care of giving feedback around what we see in each other that can be improved, and being honest with ourselves at what we are good at and what our superpowers are and what our limitations are, and operating within what the reality of our truth is, and being okay with leaning into failure and leaning into vulnerability. And a lot of this kind of value-based work that we've done actually creates a lot of what we bring into our conversations, into our topics, and helps us actually unravel what we can do to make a difference. If you're across social media, you'll find us on LinkedIn, you'll find us on our website. There's a calendar of events, there's our directory of members. You can join through the join button. There's a bunch of courses you can actually check out. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, and we are soon to be off Twitter, or whatever we're calling it now. And Facebook's better, and everything's changed since we started in 2015. We probably need to update all our tiles there. So if you are interested in joining, we'd love to hear from you. There's loads of benefits, and up and coming. You can come along to obviously any of our events and dip your toe in the water for as long as you like. There's no pressure on becoming a member. We've got another webinar coming up on the 25th of October. This one is a members-only think tank. We're actually mapping out what we're doing over the next 12 to 18 months. 26th of October, Leanne's hosting a podcast, How to Increase Leadership. On the 27th of October, we have a webinar on financial wellbeing for employees with Catherine Dixon. She's from IOOF, and she's got incredible expertise around the importance of financial literacy in the workplace. A lot of stress and anxiety comes from budgeting and financial issues at home that then come into the workplace. And she's going to share with us what we can do and how we do it in terms of rolling out those kind of programs to support employees to be masters of their finances. Speaking of masters, masterclass coming up on high performing and sustainable teams with Jodie Cottle. She has actually written a book called The Pocket MBA after doing her MBA and applying it inside her own business and creating the culture that is just very sustainable and high performing. She's taken a lot of the concepts that she took in MBA and she's kind of put it into simple language as a playbook for business. Her book is definitely worth getting. She can get that off her website online, but join our masterclass on the 3rd of November. We're going to apply some of her frameworks. So that'll be a very practical session. On the 10th of November, our interactive webinar, Ageism Hurts Us All. Tracy Cooper and Maria Nolan are, they're also on the East Coast, as is Jodie. They are in Queensland, and they have done a lot of work in change management. They've been working a lot across different sectors, and they really want to unpack ageism, not just, in terms of what happens for youth, the young ones coming through, as well as those that are in the older senior categories. And we're really going to unpack how we can actually tackle ageism and then look at how to embrace within an organisation the benefits of having that diversity across age. On the 14th of November, we have another podcast. We have the dynamic duo, Leanne Jeffrey will be online with Erin Clark. She's the tech founder. She's in WA for Behind the Dark Story app that's just been going gangbusters and helping people navigate walking tours across key sites around Perth and up in the Pinnacles and all around WA. So we're actually going to look at the value of codeless tech. So Erin's expertise is in looking at creating apps using existing software and existing platforms to actually achieve what you want to achieve. So you don't have to go to back to the basics of coding. So that's really cool for any organizations that have been thinking they could do with some apps. And on the 15th of November, another interactive webinar online, Understanding Women's Health with Dr. Sasha Fulton. Leanne also will be sharing the calendar link in the follow-up email, because we've got end of year celebrations also coming up. And so there's lots going on before the end of the year. If you are interested in joining, it's only $299 for 12 months, and that means you can get access to everything at the member discounts. You get an online directory listing. If you want to co-create some part of our program with us, we'd love you to consider joining as a premium member. It's kind of like a partnership model, is our premiums. They're our leaders, and they help us design and co-create our program over the year. So Leanne is the person to chat to. She is online here, and she's the person that you need to talk to if you've got questions or ideas for BWA. So Leanne at businesswomenaustralia.com.au. She's always up for anything that's even out of the box. We will try it. We love to experiment. Most of the things we do work. Some of the things we don't are a lesson in learning, and that's all good. That's what it's all about. So we love to co-create and have a go. That's kind of our motto. So over to the wonderful Dr. Sasha Fulton from Peak Performance. She's the founder of Peak Preparation. Keep calling it Peak Performance. So Sasha is a highly respected and regarded qualified consultant, trainer, coach, workshop facilitator, and author on the subject of peak preparation and performance. She established Peak Preparation because she's been working in the sports science area and over 15 years of experience in the field of scientific training and preparation techniques for individuals and organisations, community groups and schools. She's been actually able to unlock sort of the possibilities that people can have in terms of cultivating that greatness, achieving their best potential, being their best versions of their best selves, and adopting an elite mindset in any situation. I've known Sasha for quite a few years now, and I've been absolutely impressed with the way she's taken her knowledge in the science and preparation for, Olympic type sports into the workplace, and to be actually being sought as a keynote speaker on subjects ranging from leadership, team performance and motivation, to health, nutrition, well-being. And as an accredited sports scientist, Sasha is sought for her expertise as a coach, not just only in athlete and team preparation areas in local, state, national and Olympic levels, but also being brought in to actually think by organisations to look at how can we apply these kind of thinkings into our workplaces. She's been interviewed on numerous podcasts, she's spoken at conferences, she's been on panel events, and we're always grateful for the time that she spends with us. She carving out this knowledge for us. So we really are very pleased to have Sasha. If you are looking for someone to design something bespoke for your organisation, some sort of transformational workshop, Sasha is your person. She really takes her scientific brain to actually identify what your needs are and do something very bespoke. So she's an excellent collaborator and a partner, and she's working with corporates, business associations, educational and community groups, teams and individuals to prepare and achieve for their goals. Now, if that's not a hard act to follow, we also have the wonderful Angie Bain. What an incredible duo we've got on today. I'm absolutely blown away by having both Sasha and Angie. Angie's a qualified counsellor, she's an educator, and she specialises right in this wellbeing and performance space. She's got a very person-centric approach, so looking at the individual, what does the individual need, and draws on the variety of theoretical approaches, but also the practical measures that she's seen operate and work, achieving individual, team, organisational health and human performance outcomes. Angie spent her professional career working in the elite sports area. We know and have heard about the work that she's done with the AFL Players Association, the Australian Cricketers Association, the Australian hockey and netball teams in athlete development, wellbeing counselling and mental health case management. And more recently, she's been incorporating wellbeing initiatives, education and programs at the Health and Wellbeing for staff and for the players at the Fremantle Dockers Football Club. Have to admit, I am a Dockers fan. My husband is Eagles, so it's always very interesting during the season. Angie's got both graduate and postgraduate qualifications in sports science, sports psych, coaching, career counselling and counselling, along with expertise in maximising professional and personal performance. And she's obviously sought for all this expertise and knowledge she brings. So we're so lucky to have two incredible, high profile and highly experienced and qualified individuals on our panel. So I'm going to open up our discussion, and I'd like to invite anyone who does want to share something to pop it in the chat, or if you've got a question, pop it in the chat as moderator. I'll be keeping an eye on that. Thank you everyone for carving out the time. We hold space for all those women who have registered, and for whatever has come up for them. We know how busy our lives are. Something has come up that has mean that they haven't been able to join us today. But as I said, this is recorded and we will be sharing this across all our social platforms. So I might start with you, Sasha. I'm very keen to hear sort of what is the health and what when we talk about health and wellbeing, what is it? Why does it matter? And when it comes to teams, why is it important from a team and a community perspective?
Oh, hi, Lynn. Thank you so much for having us. And thank you very much for the very warm introduction. So lovely to be here today. And thank you for everyone for joining. Look, I think it's such a great question to open with. Why does health and wellbeing matter? I think it's important to first kind of, be able to define what health and wellbeing are. So from my perspective, health and wellbeing refers to the sort of the holistic. It's the state of being physically, mentally, and socially healthy. So I think it's this holistic concept that encompasses various aspects of life, including our nutrition, our exercise, our sleep, our stress management, our social connections, our emotional well-being. And I think importantly, it's not not merely the absence of disease, which sometimes I think we kind of think that, you know, we're healthy and we have good well-being as long as we don't have a comorbidity. But I think it's, you know, it's so much more than that. Research has shown us that mentally healthy workers are more productive and are less likely to take sick leave. So that's something that's obviously pretty important in the workplace and even in the broader community. And I think we can see that a mentally healthy workplace and high levels of well-being is actually characterized by people who watch out for each other. You know, managers and teams who understand mental health and openly talk about it. People knowing about the various things that they can do to build resilience for when there are challenging times at work and at home. You know, having staff with mental health concerns who are able to seek help early, and also having staff with mental health issues that are able to be supported in their recovery. So, you know, I think it's important that we remember that employers can promote health and well-being in the workplace, provide resources such as mental health support services, flexible work arrangements, healthy food options, and even opportunities for physical activity, say.
And from your perspective, you know, you're being brought in to so many different organisations, working not just with the athletes or the sports teams. You're also working with the employees too. So, you know, from that perspective, you know, how is it then, you know, who drives those conversations, and how are they defining health and well-being?
Yeah, look, there's probably one thing I've learned, and I don't think it's just particularly in sport. I think it's with any organisational structure over the last 20 to 25 years, is that if it is not authentically led by the leaders of the organisation, you're just not going to get cut through. And what I mean by that is that it's embedded in the culture of the organisation. It's embedded and actually is articulated in the strategic plan. So it's not just, oh yeah, we look after our people. And particularly in sport, it is a little bit more personal. You know, the people that work in sport aren't just going in 9 to 5, ticking a box and going home and separating themselves from their work. It's kind of, a lot of people that work in elite sport are very, very passionate, and it's personal as well. So the care for the person becomes even more important because it's not just an employee number 175. So firstly, the authentic leadership, and I suppose the transformational leadership of it coming down and going back up again. So getting the right people that share the same vision around health and well-being of its employees is paramount. But geez, it's hard to find them. Like, it's hard to find organisations that have a structure of people in all of those positions. So that's the first thing. The second thing I would say is I'm doing a lot of work at the moment. I'm fascinated by the work of Amy Edmondson, who's a Harvard scholar in the space of psychological safety in the workplace. So all the things that Sasha spoke about were spot on. But the reality is, if the environment is not psychologically safe for people to be themselves, be their authentic self, if it's not safe to challenge the status quo, if it's not safe to say, look, I don't understand, or if it's not safe to ask for help, all of those other mechanisms are just not going to get accessed because the voice in the first place doesn't feel safe enough to come out. So I'm doing a lot of work with our leaders around psychological safety in the workplace, what it means, how do you lead a team in an environment where, you know, we're high performing, we've got outcomes like daily outcomes, weekly outcomes, monthly outcomes, and obviously season outcomes. So it's very much an outcomes-based industry. And so, you know, creating that environment that people are going to be investing in every single day of their lives, when you add all of that up, the higher the safety element, the higher productivity and engagement that you're going to get. So we've scraped the surface, but we've got the right people in the right places to help me drive that. So it's not just left with me to be the one responsible for doing that. It's a shared responsibility amongst the leadership. So they would be the two things that I'd say really stand out for me, is around structure and organisational embedding this in the organisational strategy and the recruitment and the type of leaders that you recruit, having a shared vision of it. And then the other part of is it developing the psychological safe space that employees can come to work and be fully engaged and perform.
And while I've got you, perhaps I'll kick on to the next question. So, you know, how are organisations actually measuring this? I mean, you know, it can be measured at the individual level, but at the team level, and then at the organisational level, and then we can look outside companies, businesses, organisations into community. I mean, what are the measures that are being used?
So the measures can be on different levels. So if I start with the individual, because I'm very much interested in individualised approach, as much as we're talking about organisation, so many, you know, every individual is so unique. So there has to be an individualised approach. So we have an individualised wellbeing wheel. Oh, this is the wellbeing dog that I was talking about. Come here.
Love it.
I moved into another room because she was barking. So anyway, bear with me. I'm working from home today. Individual wellbeing plan. So every individual has a wellbeing plan. They also, and we use what's called a wellbeing wheel, which is a wheel of life. You know, you can find them on the internet everywhere, and then you just kind of create it bespoke to the environment, the industry that you work in. And then it is driven by the employee. It is their wellbeing plan. They engage with it. We encourage them to engage in it. We educate them on all the different aspects, like what Sasha was saying about all the different parts of what wellbeing, financial, career, mental, physical, etc. And we educate them on those things, and then they give themselves an assessment of where they're currently at, and then it gets reviewed with their manager at a time between what they both think is the right time. So I don't say every 3 months or every 6 months. It's like, no, you two figure out, because that's where the relationship's at. You two figure out how frequently you want to review this and what's healthy for this person to have enough time to improve some aspects of their wellbeing. So that's on an individual level. We also, there's a couple of different measures of measuring psychological safety in the workplace. So the one that we've done before, and we trialled it in the football department, was called, Amy Edmondson had developed a scale or a questionnaire. So it's only, I think, 7 or 8 questions long. And it's a measure of from strongly disagree, neutral, agree, strongly agree. And we measured the psychological safety over 3 periods throughout a football season, because I was really interested to see whether the start of the season and where everyone's at, there's not as much risk at that point. Everyone feels like they can win games of football. Halfway through the season, you actually know how you're going, like whether you're in. Hey, excuse me. Whether you're in contention for finals or not. And then you've got end of the season where you even know that you're in the finals or not. So that's Amy Edmondson's psychological safety questionnaire. And there's a specific one for sport if you're based in sport. And that's called the Sports Inventory Psychological Safety. Yeah.
Yeah, we're familiar with the Amy Edmondson stuff in Business Women Australia. Kerry Nobes has recently done some leadership training webinars with us utilising the psychological safety piece. So yeah, that's good to hear. I mean, there are measures around costs as well, aren't there? Sasha, maybe if you could jump in and just share with us sort of, I know Angie just referred earlier on about it's really hard to find those organisations where the leadership are really behind this and it's being driven by the top, because otherwise it's not going to be effective. I mean, what are the measures that organisations could be looking at around the health wellbeing measures where it's costing the organisation if they don't do something about it?
Oh, absolutely. And look, I love the fact that Angie can jump in and share, you know, these individual, you know, what happens at the individual level when she's one-on-one with an employer or one-on-one with a player. Like, I think to get that insight, it's so incredible. So I'm going to probably just take a step back and look at the bigger view, if you like. And I think, I mean, we've got the ones that we can all probably think about around enhanced work performance or a decrease in work performance and productivity. But when we're talking about the costs, a reduced, like if you can reduce your staff turnover, that saves massive costs for an organisation. The costs involved with recruiting and training individuals is massive. So if you can, hold on to your employees by creating this, exactly as Angie said, it can't be a model that ticks boxes. It has to be an authentic model where people walk into the workplace and they know it, they feel it. I can ask any question today, and I'm not going to be called out for it. It is that psychologically safe environment. So I think, those recruitment and training costs, fewer sick days, I think that in itself, that saves an organisation substantial amounts of money. And I think it's a fair measure as well as to the well-being of an organisation. We can make sort of guesstimates, like the World Health Organization will tell us how many days per year is realistic for an individual to be actually unwell for. And when organisations start finding that those sick days are getting, greater than that amount, we know it's not always illness that is keeping somebody at home. It can be a psychologically unsafe environment that is keeping somebody at home. What else? I think the other one that I thought about also was just creativity, and the ability to think outside the box, the ability to be proactive, the ability to be innovative. When you've got an organisation that has is conscious of the health and well-being of their employees, creativity is at an all-time high. Innovation is at an all-time high. I don't think you get those measures in a psychologically unsafe environment. People don't have the ability to be creative because they're just in survival mode. So anytime that we can see people coming up with different ways to run an organisation or different initiatives or different projects, I think that can also be a good measure of a psychologically safe environment that has healthy, well-being outcomes.
So for sort of when we look at the holistic, state of being from an individual point of view, and then we look at the holistic state of being from a team or an organisational point of view, and then start to really unpack, what the cost of these initiatives are going to be, or these programs, because I know there's a lot of pushback from, chief financial officers going, oh, here's another program, it's going to cost us this, we haven't got the budget for it. A lot of amazing people in this space, come to me and say, how do we get past the accountant, the company accountant, the chief financial officers, for them to understand what the costs of not doing this is, as opposed and seeing this as an investment. Is it expensive to put in place these things, Sasha?
Look, I think there's I think there are many programs out there that are relatively simple, relatively low cost, and very, very effective. Obviously, the various programs and initiatives can vary greatly in the complexity, and therefore costs, might well depend on the type of program and the different resources that are going to be needed or available. But I think that, there's lots of, being able to visit your local government's health department website. There's lots of information on those type of internet programs. I think there are lots of ways to make programs low cost and effective as well.
And what are your thoughts, Angie, when you get a bit of pushback from, perhaps someone that you've put a put a bit of a proposal to? I mean, what would you
Mhm.
say about initiatives? You know, do they have to be costly programs?
Look, when you look up the most recent mental health, workplace mental health statistics, it's actually very alarming and scary to see how much it's costing for people being absent from work, or even I call it that presenteeism. You know, like they're at work and they're ticking boxes and they're looking like they're engaged and they're working, but they're not coping and they're not being productive and they're certainly not engaging, but they're just surviving. If you put those costs, I think it was $2.7 billion, the most recent statistics. I just remember looking at it going, right. And then you've got organisations that won't put, you know, a certain amount of money, and it's all relative to your industry, non-for-profit versus, you know, the corporate sector and private enterprise. But I just go, if that's the cost, and if the bit that I think, so my short answer is it's not expensive when you think, like what Sasha said, you're not going to retain people and you're just going to burn through your employees. And the transition of taking someone out and bringing someone back in is a costly exercise on so many different levels. So for me, I don't think it's costly because I've got the viewpoint or the mindset that the person is the asset. And so when the person's what's most valuable, then you invest in the person. But I do think, like all of those, at the moment, it sits with human resources departments in most businesses, and I don't think they're necessarily staffed appropriately. Kate, you spoke about staffing being an issue, but you know they're under-resourced in some respects, so they're all just keeping their heads above water doing what human resource managers need to do, and this has now become something more of an add-on. And so, but just by adding on, something's got to come off, and organisations aren't prepared to do that. So you do need someone like what Fremantle have done, is saying, right, you are the person responsible for leading it. It's a shared responsibility, but you need someone that's going to actually take charge of it. Because otherwise, if it sits in 3 other people's portfolio, it ends up being that thing, oh, I've tried a couple of times, but, you know, these things at this part of the year are more important than that. Yeah, so I think it becomes about reprioritising this space in your organisation, knowing what the figures, and also obviously the new legislation around psychosocial hazards. Like that's a great step in the right direction, because that actually puts it back on organisations going, no, this is a health and safety issue now. Because when it's a physical thing, everyone goes, yeah, we better do this, we better do that. But when it becomes about the mind or a psychological injury, it's like, oh, yeah, what do we do? Don't really want to, you know. So I think it is much worth the investment. And I certainly could say, anecdotally, we haven't remeasured our people for this year, but anecdotally, we are definitely seeing the benefits of it in a short period of time. In what I've been around 1 year, and yeah, me being the main leader, I can see the benefit of that.
Amazing. Angie, while I've got you, if you can stay unmuted, tell us some of the best practices that you're seeing where there are organisations achieving those team health and wellbeing outcomes. Sort of where that might give us some ideas of some things that we could start exploring.
Yeah, look, I started my research through the work of what Amy Edmondson had done, and also Simon Sinek. So they're 2 of my go-tos in terms of what the most recent research is saying. Even though this research in psychological safety has been around since the earlier, just prior to 1990s, or Amy's work anyway, you know, that's a long time ago now. And it's like, but it's only just been starting to get a little bit more credibility. So both of those 2 in terms of leaders. In terms of businesses, it's a really good shout out, because I'm struggling to find other agencies or organisations that are doing this. Or I suppose doing it more systemic. So I think there's organisations that do it like the HR department does it. It's their responsibility, but it's not this shared responsibility. It's not systemic from the leadership through the executive, through the middle management, through to the employees. I mean, obviously Google, the Navy SEALs, Walt Disney, you know, those massive organisations have looked into this space. More locally, I mean, I'm not as familiar as what businesses do in Australia, because I'm taking the examples that have been researched overseas. But I'd be all ears if other people know of whether there's some really significant systemic reprioritising of this space, because that's all it is. People go, we don't have time for it, we don't have money for it, you know, and it's just a old traditional mindset of just not being able to look at the model with the people being the asset. You know, we look at the product being the asset, or we look at the machinery being the asset, or we look at the formula for a certain medicine being the asset. But no, the people, in my opinion, is the asset. And when you start to view things through that mindset, then it starts to change what your priorities are.
Yeah. What about you, Sasha? Are you seeing any sort of, you know, great initiatives, any best practices that you've come across?
Look, I've seen, I think schools are starting to implement a variety of programs and initiatives to support, you know, the resilience and wellbeing of students. And there's, you know, very possibly some things that organisations and businesses can take from, you know, that area and implement as well. There's a framework called the Australian Student Wellbeing Framework, and it's a foundational document that kind of provides Australian schools with a vision and a set of guiding principles to support school communities to build positive learning environments, and to consider reviewing their current safety and wellbeing policies. And I believe I think it's designed to help all students from like the first year of school all the way up to year 12. And from memory, there are 5 key elements of the framework, which I think include leadership, inclusion, just as Angie said, the student having a voice, so the individual having a voice, partnerships and support, something like that. So that's kind of what's happening in the school space, and I think we see some of this in government as well. So I know Vic Health has like a range of programs and projects that aim to improve the health and wellbeing of Victorians. So they've got various initiatives around promoting physical activity and healthy eating and social connections. And I've seen some programs that I think they call it Health and Wellbeing Queensland, again, have a variety of programs that aim to make sort of healthy living almost more accessible to Queenslanders. So I think there are, you know, some various initiatives and programs that are happening sort of across the board. But it has been, I mean, it's really heartwarming, if you like, to see elite sport and particularly the position that Angie holds, you know, with the Dockers, to see an elite sporting organisation investing in a role like that, where you've got an entire country that follows that sport. You know, I think that in itself sends an amazing message as to just how important this space is. You know, winning premierships doesn't just happen by having the best athletes on board. That's not how elite sport works. Winning premierships happens from having healthy, happy athletes that can work together as a team. And, you know, Angie's able to get down and talk to, you know, the grassroots players all the way to the elite, and all the way through that middle management to the leaders of the organisation. So, you know, I think it's so nice that we're able to see some of these elite sports leading the way as well. And I think businesses and organisations can take a lot from that.
Absolutely. Angie, did you want to share something further on that particular piece?
Yeah, I just popped in the chat there a couple of organisations or websites that you could go to. You know, we recently did an Are You OK staff day, They've got some really good workplace wellbeing kind of frameworks and guidelines and stuff like that. Heaps of resource throughout state government through WA Mental Health Commission, and also the Safe Work WA have a lot of psychosocial stuff as well. And I'm sure Kate and anyone else that's on the line that works in HR would probably know of these. There's not much that I can send you that's related in terms of sport. So I take it from government agencies. Any kind of key stakeholders in this industry is really important. And, you know, like, I think it's also just starting this conversation with fellow colleagues in different industries and just finding out what, I mean, mining obviously has increased their commitment and research and servicing and in this space because of certain, you know, like, yeah, negative consequences for having unsafe environments. So it's to me, I just feel like this whole area is just going to explode. So I think we'll see more of these agencies in this space providing us with more guidelines, but you still need someone that's actually going to lead it within a system.
And I think something you said earlier on, which really has resonated with me, is, you know, is it coming into the strategic planning process rather than being this program sitting on the side that HR are sort of trying to get some funding for?
Yeah.
And which really does raise the issue then, are our boards considering this as a part of a critical issue facing boards, you know, and the leadership teams who are developing the strategies, rolling out then what the operational priorities are going to be in order to meet those strategic objectives. Then I can't recall, you know, I think we're just only now really, I'm thinking about the various boards, you know, I'm aware of in terms of what their agendas are. ESG is just something that's just kind of taking up a lot of new thinking in terms of environment, science, societal impacts and governance. I guess health and well-being of the board, of their leadership team, of their employees and their stakeholders and their partners hasn't even got on their radar, to be honest.
Yeah.
It might fall a little bit in societal issues, but that's really more around, you know, climate action groups or, you know, the role of action and activists, you know, on what our organisation's doing, usually in, you know, maybe if they're a resource company, you know, in mining, or if they're a production company or agri company in terms of carbon credits or whatever it might be. So it's, you know, it's a really simple thing, isn't it? Our health and our well-being and our capacity to cope and get joy and flourish in life. You know, I love Martin Seligman's work, Flourish. And I've been sort of thinking about, you know, what does that mean from a board and an executive team point of view? Are we a flourishing team? Are we flourishing as individuals? If we're not doing it at a leadership level, then how are we going to expect our organisations to be embracing health and wellbeing as an important and key part of our success metric? So it really is, you know, these important from the individual level right through to the strategic level. It's that systemic change, I think, Angie, that you've really put on the table today, and it's so obvious when, you know, you've said it. So
well, if I could give you an example, right? Like, most of us would have someone, either ourselves have a child or someone close to us has a child, right? And when you talk about student wellbeing, or your 12-year-old's wellbeing, right? You go, well, of course, I'm going to provide them a safe place to live in. I'm going to provide them food, water, and I'm going to provide them connection opportunities with others and new experience and learning opportunities. I'm going to look after them first, and then hopefully by doing all of that and looking after their physical health, and when they transition into adolescence and all this change and hormones is going on, we go into a doctor and go, can you have something? Have you got something for her acne? We might go to the doctors because, you know, my son's just fallen off his motorbike and fractured his knee. That is a real life example. But we attend to their well-being like it's the first and most important thing, besides school or getting to a birthday party or playing a musical instrument, right? I'm like, where does it change? So do we hit 18 and then it all just becomes about what you can do for me, or you're actually just an item number 17,468, or you're an object and you're responsible for looking after yourself, but we need you to do these things, but your well-being is not our business, that's your business. Well, I just think that's humanistically, I'm not in favor of that.
No, it's a great analogy, because really, you know, if we look after the well-being of children, which is why it's in the schools, as Sasha has said, you know, it's in the schools. If we look after the well-being and the health of our children, then they will be able to learn and flourish and develop and become powerful in their own right in achieving the goals that they want to achieve. So of course it's going to make sense. But also similarly, you know, as you were talking, I was thinking it's also important to look after the well-being of the parent. It's also important to look after the well-being of the teacher. If our teachers are stressed, anxious and not healthy, they're not going to give the best you know, environment for the children to prosper, learn and flourish. So, you know, it really is a community issue, and everyone is just as important within that whole map, and our needs are all different depending on where we're at in our life cycle. Now, if I you know, tell us about your dog. We've met your dog. What's the purpose of the dog? Because not every people are on this.
I'll give you a quick look, because she's finally, sorry, I'll keep jumping around the house and feeding treats because she's still only a puppy, and loves to use her voice, but I'll introduce you to her. So her name is Winnie. She's a 6-month-old Broodle, and I've sourced her from a breeder in Albany called Pepper Tree Lane, and they do breed wellbeing or therapy dogs for schools. And so I had this idea, you know, we're all about innovation. Psychological safety is about, if you have a safe environment, people are more likely to take risks and be creative. And Sasha spoke about the link between creativity and performance. And so for me, I wanted to provide, I suppose, a tool in the environment that wasn't like come to mindfulness or have, you know, there's a bowl of fruit or, you know, some of those workplace things that are just standard. It's like I've got a bunch of young men, particularly in staff and in playing group, that struggle to articulate their emotions. Yeah, not all of them, but there's still a handful of them. And so what I was interested in knowing, I looked at all the science behind animal therapy and dogs in workplaces, particularly in the healthcare sector and the education sector. And it was all just overwhelmingly positive. And I'm like, right, I've got to get this across the line. I've got to try. And I remember a staff member, I floated it with a few people and they said, well, if anyone can do it, the head of wellbeing should be able to do it. So must admit, it's not easy to get over the line. It took me a 16-page proposal and about 3 months of stakeholder engagement, and human resources had a lot of like red flags around a lot of things, as you can imagine. Kate's probably sitting back going, oh my God, how did you get that through? But we've addressed all of that. And yeah, so Winnie comes in to the club 3 or 4 days a week, and she is there mainly for, very clearly, for stress reduction or allowing people to tap into their parasympathetic nervous system, where we're high performing. We're getting a lot of stuff done in a short period of time, like a lot of people on this webinar are. We've already heard before about how many, you know, balls everyone's juggling. She allows us to step out of that sympathetic nervous system into a more rest and digest state. And even if it's just a 5-minute, 10-minute play, tickle, go outside, get some vitamin D and just walk a 1 lap around the oval. She's there for that. She's also there for connection. So it's a huge value at the football club is connection with self, connection with other, and then connection with different parts of the business. So she comes through the whole football club, and it's amazing to see, particularly like these grown men executives coming in their suits, and then they get down on the ground and they're like, oh, Winnie, how are you this morning? Oh, give us a cuddle, give us a cuddle. And they're acting really playfully, which I love, but it sends a message to others is that I can be playful. I'm a human being. I'm not that suit strong, you know, serious leader that you probably see me to be. So it's about connection and the well-being of our people, and allowing people to sit in a parasympathetic state throughout the day, even if it's just a few minutes at a time. And then there's a fun and play element, of course, where they're throwing balls to a You know, they're playing in the sandpit or something like that. So yeah, connection, play, and wellbeing are probably the 3 elements that she brings now to the football club.
I love that. And look, I can really resonate with that. We were going through a pretty tough time as a family a few years ago, and we got a puppy, and I was absolutely blown away by the change in each of us as individuals and the value of having this animal in our home, and the love that and the change of dynamic that this pet brought in. It was just phenomenal. Sasha, over to you. What are some of the things that that can be implemented, and how do we get people, like individuals, to take responsibility for their health and well-being? We've sort of said it happens at this level, whether they're in leadership roles, or whether or not they're in employee roles or even partnership roles. It does start with the individual making a decision to walk the talk.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think there are lots of simple initiatives that workplaces can implement to take that first step, and I think by workplaces being able to do that, that also then encourages the individual to take the first step for themselves. And Angie, I mean, just thinking about Winnie and the dog, like, it would be so interesting. I don't know how you do it, but to even work out how just having Winnie at the club follows up with that person and how they respond when they get home from work that day as well. You know, so when they walk in the door, do they then present as a better husband, father, mother, sister, support person, whatever it is, from having the ability to just decompress kind of at work, and having that a very acceptable space to say it's okay to rough and tumble with a dog, with a puppy on the floor at work, and therefore that's allowed me to kind of decompress and be that better person throughout the day, and be able to walk into the home environment you know, more present, if you like. So, you know, I think, and look, it probably also, you know, I think it inadvertently encourages physical activity, you know, and I'm not saying that everyone needs to go out and own a pet, but to come into work and have a dog that you can, you know, what a great excuse to get outside and take a walk around the oval. You know, and when we talk about, you know, looking after dogs, we all know that, you know, we don't feed dogs food that is sort of human food and not good for them. So I think even that element, you know, probably, you know, the promotion of healthy eating habits, you know, and hydration, and getting good sleep is probably, you know, super important as well. I like this concept of supporting the National Awareness Days and months. Oh, look at that. There we go. Gosh, she's huge, actually. Hello, Winnie. She's huge. Does she speak, Ange? Will she speak back to me? Winnie?
Winnie, who's this? Yeah, say hi to Sasha.
Hello.
Anyway, check dog moment. Let's continue.
I like the purple colour. Yeah, so these, all the various, I recently went through and created a 12-month sort of wheel of National Awareness Days and months. And, you know, it's amazing to go through, and a very simple "Are you okay?" day can really, you know, meld out. It's not just one day. It gives everyone the opportunity to ask that to various people around us on a daily basis. I love the idea, you know, even a breast cancer awareness day, say, which I think we have coming up possibly in a couple of days' time. You know, so many of these things we're all touched by. They do cause stress, you know, in our lives. It's impossible to turn up for work and completely block out the stuff that every one of us is going through, you know. And so to have that sort of you know, it's a great excuse to again decompress and think about loved ones. I also like the idea of celebrating achievements, you know, so having that sort of celebrating success, which again I think is one that we don't necessarily do well enough throughout a year or throughout a season. So being able to celebrate the small wins, not just waiting until, you know, winning a premiership, which hopefully that's always the end goal, but, you know, to celebrate what are the small wins that one can celebrate kind of along the way as well. Providing opportunities for learning and development, setting up mental health resources. And again, you know, one thing that I recently saw somewhere was, I can't remember which organisation it was, but they, there's one question that's asked at the start of sort of every single meeting, whether it's formal or informal, and especially in reviews, is how are you? As opposed to sort of getting straight down to business or whatever. This organisation has simply implemented this very simple question, how are you today? As, you know, the very first question that is implemented sort of at every meeting as well. So, you know, and certainly in an athletic environment, you know, we encourage coaches to not just spend the time talking about performance all the time, and not just spend the time talking to the athlete about them being an athlete, but talking to the athlete about what's going on around them as well. And I think inadvertently that also helps the athlete in question to realise they're not just an AFL player. They are not just a swimmer or a gymnast. You know, they're a person, they're a daughter, they're a son, they're a brother, they're a sister. They, you know, and when we talk about transitions in health and well-being as well, that's often a critical piece for an athlete, to realise that, you know, often they've gone through their whole career being labelled as either this superstar or this sporting star, but when they have to transition out of sport, what does that then leave them? So helping them to realise throughout the entire journey that there's so much more than just this one hat that they've been given. So yeah, look, I think there are lots of different, sort of simple initiatives that can be taken. We've just got to, you know, and as we've been saying, I think the theme almost of this is, which Angie brought up right at the start, is stuff that needs to be embedded into an organisation. It needs to be front and centre. If it's going to be on the wish list or the to-do list, it's just too easy that it's, you know, left for somebody else or it's forgotten about. But when you have one central person that has the time and the ability and some resources to drive this, that allows this beautiful creativity of bring a dog to work as a therapy dog initiative that Angie's being able to create. So I think sort of that's where we're at.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be as difficult as I think people think. You know, some of the things that I've been doing as a management consultant with some of the teams I work across and their leadership teams, just bringing in, you know, reminding them of what our values might be. Our values might be innovation or experimentation or best practices or whatever their values might be around the opportunity, and be able to bring in those conversations that then say, you know, in one instance, the classic check-in, you know, I got one of my teams, they're all lawyers, and at the beginning of every meeting, I would just get everyone to check in, and rather than check in, generally to check in and just share what's been going on before so that we can all land into the meeting. And it's a bit of that third space kind of concept that Angie was talking about before, because it created, and I've actually, Angie, if you actually share that again, because I think the people that were on before wouldn't have got that link, creating a space between what we were doing before and what we're going to be doing now. And then at the end of the check-in, then just doing a short grounding with some deep breathing and some jaw loosening and just a little bit of that micro moment of almost like a meditation practice, was really powerful, because it was not adding another thing, it was actually adding it into the everyday process that we do in a work environment. So, and what we found over a year and a half of actually doing this before our meetings, we actually got much more honest and more vulnerable sharing of things. within the meeting too. We even started to find that our managing partners started dressing much more casually, which was, he actually went a little bit off piste. He started dressing a bit like Jesus there for a while with his sandals. And he's kind of brought it back now. But, you know, it was really amazing because just small things like that were disruptive in a very highly legal environment and very strict environment was actually had a massive impact, way more than I thought it was going to have. To the point where one of the guys was saying, "Oh my God, Linny, you know, we've been doing all this stuff for a few years with you that so ahead of our times. You know, they're starting to do this with the kids at Scotch College, you know, doing sort of circles where we have to speak in the eye and we don't cross talk and we're not fixing each other, and they're doing check-ins and talking about their feelings. And you've been doing this with us for 1.5 years as a part of our meeting process." So that is another really powerful and simple thing that I've seen, you know, and I'd love to hear if anyone else has seen some things or trying things in their organisations, just pop it in the chat box, because another wonderful thing we've been doing with Business Women Australia, these walk and talks, which were originally a Perth concept, but we had our Sydney people pick it up. And what they have done, in fact, one of our leaders over there is a senior executive in IBM. They loved it so much that they're doing the walk and talks with their teams at IBM, where they go for a walk around the domain. It's just a part of a morning start. Anyone who wants to do it, it's really around fitness, but what it's doing is it's creating that connection, the conversation, it's good for them, but it's also building their societal kind of support networks outside their own immediate teams, and they're sharing information with each other, and it's having a lovely sort of roll-on effect in terms of the culture being more embracing of well-being issues. Other things that I've seen, of course, have in my own work environment, one of the accounting firms that I was working with knew I was going through a really tough time with one of my children at that time in my life, and I was working full time, doing long hours, and, you know, I was starting to get quite emotional about things. That I remember I was crying in a meeting because we didn't get some extra categories in our CRM. And the partner took me outside and said, "Honestly, I'm sure you're really dedicated to the CRM and the database, but I'm sure those categories aren't that important to you. What's going on?" So just taking me aside and then listening to me. And then he said, "Do you want to go part-time or work from home a bit more? You know, what can we do as an organisation to support you during this tough time, and to help you? We totally are with you on this journey, and we'll do everything that we can to help you get through this. This is a moment in time, and if you want to work from home or go part-time and then want to come back full-time down the track, we are there for you and with you. Just let us know." And Angie, you're pointing. Can I throw over to you?
Oh, no, I was thumbs up. I was like,
Yeah.
how refreshing is that? You know, that you were treated as a person first and an employee second.
Yeah.
But yeah, and with that approach, you're more likely to open up and go, well, in fact, yeah, I'll tell you a little bit more about what's going on, and this is probably going to be the better option for me for now. It's not going to be forever, but, you know, but going on Sasha's, we started to do those closed questions, wellbeing check-ins at the beginning of some of our meetings. But we got a lot of good people in our environment that are really efficient at going, yeah, good, yeah, I'm good, yeah, nah, yeah, good. So when it's a closed question, yes or no, or good or bad, it's too easy. People get let off the hook too easy just to go, yeah, I'm good, because they don't want to talk about it. So that means that it's not the right time, it's not the right place, or it's not the right reason to go and share about how they're actually going. So then we use a traffic light system. So you don't have to explain why you're red. You don't have to explain. So red is obviously you're not very good. And so someone would follow up with that person afterwards. And if they're red, they probably shouldn't be at work. But if they're amber, they might give a little bit of info. They go, yeah, I'm in the middle at the moment, I'm amber. So we know they've got load. Yeah. So we talk about it in terms of load and capacity and just heaviness or lightness or energy and stuff like that. It's easy in elite sport because we've got to use all that language with our athletes. And green's obviously, I'm good to go, I'm coping, I'm healthy. But it's interesting, like in each of the meetings, you kind of, more often than not, you've got, you know, a couple, 2 or 3 in the green, and the majority of people are sitting in amber. And the thing is, with these check-ins, you know, people can sit in amber for years. So yeah, so it's a good check-in, but get more information, give it a little bit more of a, that it's not a closed, it's an open kind of, so you're actually forcing people to give a little bit. Obviously they don't need to be personal, but yeah, when people become more open, the vulnerability is the hugest number one characteristic of psychologically safe environments, is to show that people are human and can make mistakes and are not always okay.
That's so true. And in those meetings, when the leaders are actually sharing their vulnerability, that gives permission often to others to do that. It comes back to that walk and talk at a leadership level. So, you know, there's quite a few of our community are in leadership roles, titled leadership roles. Others are actually change champions within their organisations. They have a leadership mindset. So what would be your advice, Sasha? Maybe over to you. What is your advice in how we lead ourselves when it comes to health and wellbeing?
Yeah, I think that's I mean, that's a great it's a great question, really. And I think this is where we get the ability to kind of develop our own self-leadership skills as well. So, you know, being able to understand or identify, you know, your own sort of desired experiences and how you motivate yourself towards them. And just having this idea of self-leadership, you know, it involves self-knowledge, it involves goal setting, it involves sort of self-management. And so I think there's quite a few different, you know, it then becomes a deliberate practice as well. So I think that can be one space that can be quite beneficial. When it comes to leading oneself, I think it's also, I like this concept around lead with facts and not fear. It's, you know, so often we over dramatize things, or we catastrophize situations. And I love, my 3-year-old is, you know, such a wonderful metaphor, if you like, for helping to keep me in the here and now, because she doesn't. And that's what I like about, you know, something like a Winnie, like a therapy dog, is that you know, this dog is not worrying about what happened last week. She's not worrying about what's going to happen next week. She is just in the here and now. She's enjoying the cuddles right now and the tickles or whatever it is right now. So I think, yeah, this idea of kind of leading with facts and not fear, which kind of helps us stay informed more about health and wellbeing issues. We haven't mentioned it yet, but this concept around emotional intelligence as well. So being able to, or EI for short, be able to, you know, practice emotional intelligence. So those different components around self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management, and really helping or sort of being able to practice those with an actual kind of foundation for what they mean and how they can be beneficial. We've spoken a bit already about focusing on self-care, but I think, you know, we started off this conversation talking about swimming in the ocean, and the benefits of kind of cold water immersion and cold showers and things. So being able to work out what are those, you know, some of those hobbies or activities that you really enjoy, and make you feel good as well. You know, with alongside getting enough sleep, eating well, or nourishing your body with food that can make it sort of more energized and more productive, exercising regularly, and getting those social connections as well with friends outside of the workplace. And I think I love this idea of, you know, kind of nurturing your soul as well. So, you know, we've all got this busy life. We've got crazy deadlines. We've got so much that's been asked of us, so many different hats to kind of wear. But if you can kind of come back and evaluate your own emotional self on a regular and kind of continual basis, it's that great metaphor, I think, of being able to actually nourish your soul. And I mean, Angie just shared with us, you know, the fact that, you know, people can sit in an amber space for years on end. I mean, it's, you know, I'll be honest and say I've probably been there for years on end, just trying to make it all work. And yeah, every now and again it does. It's Lynn, I've had plenty of conversations with you on that space. And it gets really, really, really emotional and overwhelming. So I did have one question, which is directly to Angie, around who looks after the well-being manager. Who looks after you at work, or is that where Winnie comes in as well?
Well, it's a really good question, and it's a really good question for anyone that's the primary carer, I suppose, of any organisation or any family. Like, who's looking after the person that's looking after the people? I'm obviously, I think a strength of mine is self-care. Hasn't always been. I've had to learn the hard way as well through going through a stage of burnout. But it's a non-negotiable for me. Like, I've got 2 adolescent sons, I've got 2 dogs, and I've got a full-time commitment to my workplace in this space. So if, firstly, I know how I feel when I don't prioritise my self-care, and then I know how I feel when I do. So for me, you know, every now and again, I tap into other things coming a priority, and that's okay, because this whole work-life balance thing does not exist. You just got to be moderately balanced across all of the identities. And sometimes your work's going to be a bit more important for a 2-week period or a month period, but then family's going to be a bit more. So it's just navigating and being okay with yourself, that the self-care, I'm not always 100% at self-care. Yeah. But I'm okay being 75%, then 82%, and then sometimes it's 60%, but I don't beat myself up about it, because I just go with the organicness of life. But I'm very committed to that. Like that, that is a priority. It's one of the you know, it's in my diary. So it's not like, oh, I'll just figure it out at the end of the day, because you know what happens when you live like that. You get home and you're too tired and you've got to cook dinner, and you know, you're looking at all the wet towels on the floor and all the other stuff that adolescents do. So yeah, it's booked in. It's a commitment I make to myself. The other thing is, I have to be able to demonstrate what I'm trying to sell, because essentially I'm trying to sell, this needs to be a priority. So if I'm not looking after myself physically, emotionally, mentally, financially, spiritually, then people are going to look at me and go, well, you're a bit unauthentic or disingenuous, you know. And one of our massive values at the football club is authenticity. So I very much demonstrate loudly my self-care, whether that's practicing some mindfulness out in the sun on my own. People see me lying down thinking, oh, there's Ange doing whatever she's doing, but she's obviously doing something for herself. And then it's funny, like people come and join you or ask, and then you just go, just spend 5 minutes checking in with your 5 senses. 5 minutes, it's not going to kill you, you know, like, and then I obviously have some people within the football club that come and ask me those questions. They're probably the people that I'm most closely connected to. So the relationships are really strong. And then I've obviously got a bunch of support systems outside the football club. So I have my own psychologist. I spend a bit of time and effort and obviously resources on physical therapy and psychological therapy as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I recently saw and thank you for sharing all that. Like that, yeah, that really helps. And I see a psychologist on a regular basis as well. And yeah, it's I think it's again, it's finally becoming almost something that I'm actually happy to talk about as well, and something that I'll often share with athletes or clients, and not feel the need to be ashamed about it or anything like that. I recently heard, Lynn, I never forget you telling me and clarify the words that you use, but you always, you know me as a very high achiever, and you've always told me your sentiment has always been, what's the word that you use? You're not trying to be the best. You're trying to be, you're very happy being average or was it average?
In terms of me, oh yeah, I'm the queen of average. I'm not
But
ever trying to be perfect.
not-
I'm happy with, I
yeah.
call myself the 80% girl. That's a pass. In fact, it's actually a distinction, to be honest. I'm happy with that. Yeah, I'm the 80% girl. And I say that to my clients. I say, you guys have been sitting on this, oh no, it might be a newsletter, e-news or whatever it is they've developed, and they've been sitting on it for a year and a half and haven't got one out yet because they're trying to get it perfect. And I'll go, let's just get it out and then we can fix what we've got wrong.
Yeah.
You know, I think this perfectionism is really an interesting and a whole nother subject area. But Sasha, can I throw over to Kate? Kate, you're doing some interesting things in your organisation too. You've shared in the chat box. But, you know, can you tell us a bit about what you're exploring in your organisation?
Yeah, so I am a lived experience mental health advocate. Had my run-ins with burnout, depression and anxiety. I'm really big on psychological safety in the workplace. It's something that's really important to me. You know, I think when you've experienced burnout and you understand how easily it can happen to anyone as well, the perspective I like to take in terms of leadership is that everyone is a person, firstly. And I think I really resonated with that because, you know, regardless of our job, you know, our job will always be there, but something could happen in your personal life that impacts your performance in your job. But you need to have support around you and leadership that understand that, you know, that those things are more important. Like if you need to take time off because one of your family members is ill, or because you've had a loss in the family, or because you're struggling to juggle your commitments, you know, that should be acceptable, and there shouldn't be any stigma associated with that. I speak to some other friends who are in management roles, and it sounds like, you know, their companies take very old school approaches. It's almost like, you know, have some concrete, harden up kind of thing approach to it all, and I think there's such a beauty in vulnerability. And I like to try and, I guess, walk the walk and talk the talk with it by sharing vulnerability. I have found that there is like I struggle to find the line between sharing the vulnerability and then, I guess, in some circumstances, if your team or you have any kind of member on your team who is looking to take advantage of that. I'm not sure if anyone's ever had experience with that. I know a lot of our team have resonated with it when we're sharing things and being vulnerable, and when leadership's being vulnerable. But unfortunately, sometimes, you know, you might have a team member who doesn't quite resonate with it. But if I can make an impact in the rest of the team's life and help encourage them to be more vulnerable and authentic, then I've done my job, you know, then I'm happy.
And you've actually done some brainstorming in your organisation, haven't you, around what sort of things came up?
So we were looking at all the different elements, and we've got a really culturally diverse workforce. So religion, spirituality, so looking into that in the workplace as well. So time for prayer, I think it was really important for the other staff as well to understand somebody's perspective on that and what spiritual well-being means to them, because if they're not religious or not of that particular religion, they might not understand it. So it had a sense of bringing everyone closer together as a team, because we all understood like the definitions of what well-being meant to one another across those different elements. So financial, social, emotional, physical, and spiritual, and also well-being, you know, within the workplace, and how they feel like they're achieving their goals, or whether or not it be, you know, coming to work and enjoying the impact that they're making, or something along those lines. It was really fun to set the challenges. So once we'd had those discussions, did some brainstorming about what everyone's idea of well-being in those different elements was, and then we set goals for the next month, and held each other all accountable. So we'd check in every day, like, how are you going with XYZ? So it was really fun, and it was really challenging. Some people set fitness goals, some people set mindfulness goals, goals to spend more time with their family. So there was a lot of ones about relationships as well, which was really lovely. But it was really well received, and I I've been trying to figure out how often we should do that. That's why I was asking about the check-ins, because I love that idea. Psychological safety is such an important issue in the workplace, and I'd read through the Safe Work WA report on the psychological hazards, and in healthcare, you know, there's a high rate of burnout. We see some horrible things, and that we're powerless to kind of intervene with. And yeah, I think it's so important that we make sure our workforce is healthy and has the tools they need to perform well, but to manage their own well-being and be responsible for that too.
Thank you so much. You know, I'm sure we're all very inspired by that experience, and it's sort of brought up some great ideas in my own mind about things I'd like to experiment with some of the teams I'm working with. So thank you, Kate. Okay, we're coming to the end. We've got 5 minutes. Sasha, last words from you, and then I'll hand over to Angie for final words.
Yeah, sure. Look, I mean, thank you. It's been so lovely to, you know, have this open discussion and have everybody jumping in and share their thoughts and some different links. I just shared one from the Black Dog Institute now that I sort of remembered about, and you guys have probably heard about as well. So I think it's sort of, I don't know, maybe my final words are there is momentum that's gathering here. Just, you know, from everyone being on this call and having this discussion, hopefully that means that we tell somebody else about what we've, you know, done today. I'm sure Winnie will pop up quite a few times, and, you know, just kind of remember to, you know, spread the word. We're all carrying, you know, a huge load. I started my day this morning at down at Cottesloe Beach with my pod squad, my beloved pod squad. And we did our 2K swim, and everyone's like, you're mad and you're crazy. And we do it all through winter and every single morning. And it's so much more. And as Kate knows as well, it's so much more than just cold water. And it's so much more. It's very much about the coffee afterwards and being able to, you know, check in with other people. And, you know, everyone knows I'm going through a little bit of a tough time at the moment. And, yeah, people are just like, you have my number, pick up the phone if you need. And to know that you've got those support networks, things available is, you know, it really is. It's just huge. So I think maybe the sentiment from me is let's use this momentum and keep the wheel rolling.
Fantastic, Sasha. And we're really looking forward to your podcast on women's health coming up soon as well. So thank you so much for sharing your expertise, your time, your vulnerability. You really are a leader in this space. So we really we're very, very grateful to have you, and for the introductions to Angie. So Angie, final words from you.
Charge. Charge up, charge down, like don't fear, because, you know, Kate, when you said that you ran those wellbeing check-ins with your team and, everyone liked it. Oh, no shit, because people do want to be cared for, you know, like people do genuinely want to be connected in an authentic way. So I kind of want to leave, like I've got goosebumps just talking about it, but it's like, what have you got to lose by taking a risk and charging, leaning in, as we talk about, leaning in and having the conversation and finding the right people that you think can help you influence the rest. So you might not be that direct person that can influence, but finding the right people that can influence, that's what I'm talking about. Like, you want to charge up, you want to charge down, you want to charge sideways, and just start where you're at and stay in the present. Because when I started, I thought, I got so overwhelmed and just went, where, you know, and so I just started really simple, really small, but charge, influence, have a go, don't fear. Because we need women in these environments to really influence in this space. And I think women are actually better at starting these conversations and demonstrating by example. So yeah, take charge of self, obviously, but I think most people on this webinar will be doing that. But yeah, and then start to charge.
I love it. Let's take charge, ladies. Let's go out there into our workforces, into our communities and our homes, and in all the organisations that we're working with, and actually raised this conversation. It's been a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for those of you who have given yourselves permission to actually be here today. And we'll be actually putting the recording out. You'll be able to share that across your social media networks. It's been such a beautiful and powerful conversation. We've brought the best of our energies here today. So thank you very much, everyone. I will stop recording. Not stop videoing myself. And we will look forward to seeing you all again soon.